right. Hey, good afternoon, Monarch fans, and welcome to episode 40 of season 2 of Sports Talk with Rags. And today, here we are joined here with a very special guest that definitely knows our Tidewater sports with his time at Virginia at the Virginia Pilot, and then being with Old Dominion Athletics, Harry Minium, with us this afternoon. Harry, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Hey, I'm doing well also, and hey, let's start at the beginning. What got your interest here with at first you were a sports writer.
Well, interesting story. My dad once told me, find something you enjoy and then find a way to make a living doing it. And so I graduated from ODU. I was at the Mason Crown for 3 years, could not find a job. So I went to graduate school at VCU, and I was determined to be the next Watergate, investigative reporter. And then a job opened at the Richmond News Leader for a part-time sports writer. I didn't really want to do sports, but I did it, and I kind of fell in love with it. And then my wife got pregnant, and I had to have a full-time job. They hired me full-time, and a year later I came here. And I spent 39 years at the Virginia Pilot, about 34 of them as a sports writer. I spent 5 or 6 years covering Norfolk City Hall. And I've been at ODU for a little over 4 years now.
Right. So with starting out there at the Virginia Pilot and with the sports department, definitely saw some great action here with covering high school football and area athletics there, 79 and into the 80s and 90s.
I did. It was funny. My first weekend, I covered a Thursday night game, I think at Norfolk Academy, a Friday afternoon game, football game, then a Friday night game. And then Saturday, I went to Navy to cover a game. And then Sunday, I went to Baltimore to cover a Baltimore Colts game. We covered way too many games back then. And then Monday, I'm back in doing offensive and defensive player of the week. And back then it was 70 hours a week. That's kind of what you did when you were in sports. I remember I got to meet Bruce Smith when he was in high school. He was a junior. We became close. We've been close ever since. There were a lot of great memories. I got to cover a lot of great games and a lot of great people. So.
Right. Yes. And my friend, before we started this, I was talking about my friend Mike Sharp that gave me this platform. And he graduated from Western Branch in '93 and was basketball there. And there in the early '90s, Western Branch made it to the regionals and had to go over to Bethel. And back then, Bethel had a backcourt of Tony Rutland and Allen Iverson. So definitely, no matter what sport you covered, definitely great athletes here in the Tidewater area.
Yeah, that's for sure. Allen Iverson, he's got a bad reputation with a lot of people, but every time I haven't had much interaction with him, but I think he's misunderstood. I think he's actually a pretty good person. I'll say this: when he's not in the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, and he should be in the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. I've nominated him already. He's more than earned it. And when he was admitted to the Hampton Roads Sports Hall of Fame, Bob Molinaro and Jack Ankerson told me he could not have been more gracious. So,
Right.
he was outrageous with the Sixers, with his dress and how he played and everything. But that was his style. Yeah, he was a great athlete. I remember they played Lake Taylor in a playoff game, and I got a picture of a Lake Taylor kid just crushing him on a tackle. And I didn't see the game, but I asked, I said, how many times does this happen? And they said, that's the only time. They couldn't catch him any other time. He was a great football player too, obviously. So.
Yeah, and then there in the there in the late '90s when or mid '90s when Vic was at Warwick and Ronald Curry was at Hampton, and then what, '97 or '98 the area ended up having the McDonald's All-American game that even with Jeff Capel Sr. being the coach, his youngest son, Jason Capel, got to play here at Scope and the slam dunk competition in Hampton. And Ronald Curry, definitely was a good two-sport athlete.
Yeah, I was at that game. That was a cool game. The place was packed, and at the time, Scope was not as worn out as it is now. It was not new by any stretch of the imagination, but it has not aged particularly well. And part of that is, frankly, the city's fault, because they didn't maintain it over the years. They've tried maintenance. I guess the last 10 or 15 tried really to make it a better place, but we really need a new arena somewhere in the area, and I fear we're not going to get one anytime soon. They're just so expensive to build.
Right. But hey, after your time at Virginia Pilot, let's see, how has it been here covering Old Dominion athletics full time?
Well, it was a big change,
Yeah.
because you could, you had a lot more freedom to, let's say, be critical, when you write for a newspaper than you do when you're writing for the university. And
Right.
actually, I actually enjoy what I'm doing now, which is I can have an opinion,
Right.
but I can only take it so far, and I've kind of learned where that line is. You can't go over. And the thing about covering athletics now is you get to actually have relationships with some of the athletes. So particularly the Olympic sports, got close with some men's and women's tennis players and baseball players. Baseball kids at ODU, they're great kids. Actually, there's not a sports team on campus that doesn't have great kids here. They're all great kids, and the more kids I mingle with each year, I'm amazed at how there are so few bad apples over here. They all really, they just want to get better. They want to compete. They want to win championships, and most of all, they want to graduate. But my first 4 years here, I was covering academics. I was like covering board of visitors meetings and doing stories on new buildings and profiles of professors and all that, and working in athletics. And that was just too much. And eventually Wood Selig hired me over here full time. And actually, there's too much to do now. We have 16 athletic teams. There are great stories on all the teams, and so I have a lot of great stories to tell.
Yeah, let's go back. I know that you brought up when we were talking about high school football there, or well, actually, AI did play high school football also, but we talked about high school basketball there in the early '90s. But you brought up the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, and how about with your connection there with Old Dominion? Just talk how it was with Sonny Allen going into the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame.
That was really special for me because I've become very close with Sonny Allen's family. When I was a kid, I was, I was 11, 12, 13 years old. My dad would take me to the Norfolk Arena or to Lake Taylor High School, Wilson High School, where Old Dominion played, and Sonny was coaching. And so Sonny was always a hero to me, a guy you looked up to. It's just amazing what they did on the court, I think one year they averaged, was it 118 points per game? Anyway, it was just amazing.
Running and gunning.
Yeah, running and gunning. And, you didn't play defense, and you couldn't tackle people like you do today in college basketball. There wasn't the contact. There wasn't the size either. Guys weren't in the weight room. And so it was a completely different game. I think in many ways a more compelling game than today's game. But, it is what it is. And so when I came here, to me, one of the biggest injustices involving the Sports Hall of Fame was Sonny and Sonny not being in. So I asked Wood Selig, I said, can I start a campaign to get him in? And so I started calling people. I got Governor Ralph Northam, the mayor, Kenny Alexander, our ODU president, John Broderick, Bruce Smith, all kinds of people to write letters to the Hall of Fame, to get him in the Hall of Fame. And I wrote columns and stories, and I talked with Sonny a bunch of times. And he didn't make it that first year, and he was very disappointed. And we all were too, because we knew he probably wouldn't make it the next year, and he didn't. He died. Before there was another Hall of Fame induction. Of course, it was all delayed by the pandemic. Right. And so when he got in, it was really special, because I'd come to know his family by then. As a matter of fact, when he got in, Billy Allen got the phone call, and Billy called me, and I didn't. I got a voicemail, and he's just crying. He's bawling his eyes out. Billy, Billy cries at the drop of a hat. So, and then I called him back, and he said, "I want you to tell the family." I said, "Why should I tell the family?" And he says, "Well, you started that campaign, and you helped get him in." So I was able to tell Sonny's other children and the grandchildren and great grandchildren on a phone call that he had made it. And then I stayed at the hotel. I paid for my own hotel room and stayed with them for 3 nights during the Hall of Fame induction, and just had a great time with them. So, and Hall of Fame, if you've not been to a Virginia Sports Hall of Fame induction, it's really pretty cool. It's not that expensive. The tickets aren't that expensive. You get a great meal, and except for a couple of speeches that went a little overtime, it's really a compelling night. So, yeah, that was really special when Sonny made it.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's nice that with getting through the pandemic, that the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame was able to have their regular induction, and I know that they also have like a breakfast, the morning of the induction.
And that was a cool breakfast too, because that's when people bring all their stuff to get signed.
Oh.
And it was that was really a cool morning. Yeah.
Well, hey, so right now we're in football season, and I know that when Old Dominion football first started, they started FCS level, then they go FBS, go into CUSA, and then win the Bahamas Bowl. And last year, right after the pandemic, a little tough time, but a winning streak, and they were able to go back to postseason with going into the Myrtle Beach Bowl.
That was quite an experience, actually. It's one of my favorite experiences of all time, because that team was 1-6. We had come off back to back 5-7, 4-8, 1-11 seasons, and then we didn't play. We had a new coach. We had a bunch of new players, and they started the season 1-6. And who would have bet that they would have won their last 5 games? I mean, it was just incredible. And some of them were really close, and they just played with incredible poise. It was an amazing experience. And then we went to Myrtle Beach, and I had no idea that Old Dominion was going to take 5,000 fans here. It was a great turnout. There's 5,000 people screaming their heads off. The people in Myrtle Beach, the businesses down there, because that's what bowl games are about. It's about bringing people, and it's about getting recognition for your city and all that. And they said Old Dominion people were out everywhere spending money, and they made a hell of a lot of noise. Tulsa was really good. It's the fact that we were able to stay in that game with some of the mistakes we made we kept it fairly close most of the way. That was a great football team, but it was a great experience. It was fun too, because I got to stay in the hotel and watch the kids. They have a place where they have video games set up and snacks and everything. It was just cool to just sit there and watch your kids have a great time, or watch them go to restaurants and go to the beach. And I did not go with them out at the nightlife at night. I'm a little old for that, but no one, this one thing, Ricky Ronnie, he has good kids, and they have They have good, solid foundations. No trouble there. These kids, they just had a good time, and it was really a cool experience.
Yeah, and and definitely with following baseball, especially Old Dominion, since '87, since I moved here, and then in the early '90s, my brother played baseball at William and Mary, and at that time, Old Dominion was in the CAA, but with getting to know Eric Bohannon a little bit, and even with this being a hobby, allowing me to have a sideline pass here for a couple of the football games this year. I mean, it's been a great experience, but starting off with that first home game, I mean, opening weekend, and what an exciting atmosphere. I know that we talked about it a little bit there, the day of the game, but boy, what an exciting atmosphere here for Old Dominion and the area to be on national TV there on that Friday night.
It was, and the thing about it was a great game. You're right. The thing about Conference USA is that Old Dominion plays at Coastal Carolina in a couple of Saturdays. That game's going to be on ESPNU. Right. Yeah. That'll be Old Dominion's third time on national TV in 6 games. Nice. That's what joining the Sun Belt is all about. It's getting much higher TV profile, much better football, much better football in Conference USA, and a conference that promotes itself well and in the right way. I mean, they send out weekly updates on all the players in the NFL from Sun Belt teams, and it actually is Wood Selig, when he was sharing an email, the athletic director, he said that other than App State, we're have just as many as anyone else in the league, which really speaks well for, the talent we've had over the years. Right. But yeah, that was an amazing game. And the interesting thing is that at the end of the game, I hear a hip hop song playing, and I later learned that hip hop song is we put on for our city. And I'm going to try and look it up here on my on my Spotify. Oh yeah, it's by Jeezy and Kanye West. Put on for our city, and the kids are bopping up and down to it after they ran onto the field, and that was necessitated by that. It was a result of Virginia Tech putting out something on Twitter the night before saying, "Our state, our state," with a picture of Waterside in front of it. That's where they'd had their rally. So what they're saying is they didn't. I don't think they intended this. This is our city. So Old Dominion officials, Tristan, they were emailing, and they said, if we win, we want this song. So we put on for our city. The kids are bopping up and down. So I didn't really get the full meaning of that, and I don't think many people did. But that was quite a satisfying win for the coaches and for the players. So many of the players, like Xavier Black, who grew up a Virginia Tech fan, and he said it was just surreal to, Xavier Black, the center for ODU, had no scholarship offers except from Division IIs out of high school, and for him to be on the field, having beaten Virginia Tech, it was just a surreal moment for him. Yeah.
Yeah, and before I took a break, I mean, being on the ODU sidelines there at the kickoff, and I didn't bother him during the game, but during a timeout, going up and introducing myself to Taylor Heinecke, and remember taking my dad to the game against UMass, where nothing against DeMarco, but things ended up getting injured, and this freshman took his first snap, but talking to Heinecke there during that timeout, it seems like that Taylor does not forget where he got his start from.
No, he doesn't. You hit bing bing. You're right. You hit the nail right on the head there. Taylor's well-grounded young guy. He if you recall the night that after all the years that he was no NFL team would give him a chance, he He doesn't play for the XFL. He rides a bench in the XFL, and yet he continues to work out. No one believes in him. And he finally gets his chance, and he has this great game against Tom Brady. I remember this a couple of years ago. Yeah. So the next morning, I'm thinking, I really need to try and reach Taylor, but I know he's getting crushed. And so I texted him and say, hey, if you've got a minute. And he called right back, and he said, take as long as you want. You were with me in the begining. He says, take all the time you need. So he's, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was, as if you remember last year, he did these ads where he donned the big blue costume. Right. And as Ricky Ronnie said, hell if I would have done that, Right. But Taylor loves his alma mater so much he did that. And
yeah.
All that. The ads, it was hard to see what the producers, as they were shooting those ads, it was hard to see where they were going with it. The ads turned out great, but
right.
And Taylor really liked it, but it was just interesting him wearing the big blue outfit. So
yeah. And you bring up, I mean, I know that Scott Turner has been in his corner since the beginning, and when him and Ron Rivera, he was on Ron Rivera's staff there in Carolina, and Taylor was back up there, and then when they went to Washington, I mean, Taylor was first like an emergency quarterback. And then when he played that game against Tom Brady, it also helps when Chase Young, is like, hey, this is my quarterback,
Yeah.
So it's, hey, when you get your number called, and you step up, and, now he's still being a NFL backup.
And a lot of fans in Washington are saying, hey, we were better with Taylor, and maybe they were. I haven't watched enough of Washington play this year to make a judgment, so I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, it's amazing that the fans and the Commanders fans really love Taylor, and that's because he's a great young guy. He's a great young man. So
yeah, and with the Sun Belt, I mean, I know after Virginia Tech, we went on the road to ECU. A tough game, much less a tough atmosphere. And then at UVA, a tough, close game. But the team certainly bounced back. The first Sun Belt game there against Arkansas State, they're coming back and getting the first conference win there in a new conference.
He did, and the East Carolina, I just think is better than us this year. They're a really good team. They had a loss to someone not very good a couple of weeks ago, which shocked me, but because that's a really good football team. They're big and they're strong and fast. UVA, I think we're just as good as UVA. I think on many nights we're probably better than UVA. We got them coming off, a crushing defeat I think it was at Illinois. They just got crushed. And so their feelings were hurt, and they really played hard against ODU. They haven't played as well since. We still, we had a, 14-13 lead with 61 seconds left, and we just couldn't keep them. We just couldn't hold them. Yeah. And so that was a tough loss. But so they're 1-2. They suffered a devastating defeat, and Arkansas State is better than people think they are. Arkansas State's really a good team. It's a great program. They've had great success over the years, and we won that game. And they rallied to win that game. They showed a lot of resiliency, and they lost to Liberty this past weekend in a game ODU probably should have won. That was a game where we made a lot of mistakes, 13, 14 penalties, I think, and a couple of one interception that popped out of one of our kids' hands and right into the hands of a Liberty player who took it into the end zone. And Ricky had an interesting quote about that. He said, "You make your own luck." That kid, he kept running toward the ball even though the pass was horrible, and he made his own luck. He says that kid did what he's supposed to do. And then there was another one where Hayden Wolf pass glanced off the hands of a receiver and they intercepted, and it only took them one play to score. So you take away those two touchdowns, we're 28-28 going into overtime. So, yeah. And then the penalties, I think both teams are being aggressive. Both teams are really physical. It's hard for me to believe that 14-3 was really what the spread of penalties should have been, but you know.
Yeah. Well, hey, and so after this bye week, it is, you made reference to the next road game here is back down at Conway, South Carolina, right outside of Myrtle Beach there at Coastal Carolina, and high noon ESPNU kickoff. But then they come back home and play Georgia Southern. So ready or not, here's the conference schedule.
Yeah, and Coastal is really good. Their quarterback is really good, and he's quite active running the ball as well as throwing the ball. I was talking to Blake Seiler, the defensive coordinator, and he says that's really a good offense, and they're unbeaten, and that's why the game is on ESPNU. So that's a great opportunity for ODU to beat an unbeaten team in front of a million or so people on TV. And then Georgia Southern, of course, is homecoming, and that's you always want to win homecoming. Georgia Southern, who did they beat? Yeah, Georgia Southern that week. Yeah, Nebraska. Yeah, that week of the three huge upsets by the Sun Belt. Yeah, so they're a good team. There are no easy spots in the Sun Belt. It's not like Conference USA where you had FIU, or Middle Tennessee last year wasn't particularly good. There aren't those games in the Sun Belt. They're all good teams. Some ODU assistant coaches were telling me earlier this week that you take away two or three of the top ACC teams, and really the Sun Belt is equal with the ACC this year otherwise. And I think that's true. If you look at the comparative scores, it's definitely true. So.
Yeah. I mean, Marshall, who's going to be at Old Dominion in early November, they they went to South Bend, and knocked off Notre Dame, and then App State had a big road win. I think ODU goes to App State this year, and then JMU beat App State, and Veterans Day weekend, JMU comes to Old Dominion, So Sun Belt football definitely. You better bring your A game each Saturday or each weekend.
Yeah, and if you're planning to go to that JMU game and you don't have your tickets, better get them. That game's going to sell out.
Yeah,
and I think Georgia Southern and Marshall are going to be close to full, if not full, too. I mean, we've had real good fan support this season. 21,000 at the first game, 20,000 at the second. The third game we announced 18. It was probably more like 14 or 15 actually in the stands. But we just had a hurricane run through. And for that many people to come right after a hurricane was here when everyone's canceling their plans, it was amazing to me. And the crowd was loud and into it. Our fans are definitely, they after the offseason last season, they didn't really come back like we wanted them to. There's a pandemic and everything. This year they're back, and it's really heartening to see.
Yeah, and you bring up last week. I mean, I don't remember the the sun wouldn't be out. Plus it was a 6 o'clock game, but I don't remember a small percentage of rain coming on Saturday during the game until like Friday. I mean, it was like early part of the week. It was going to be a monsoon. So definitely, definitely it was a good crowd, but I do agree with you that with the remnants of Ian and the forecast didn't really clear up for Saturday until Friday. I think a lot of people had alternate plans.
Yeah, a lot of people I know who are coming from out of town just canceled their hotel rooms and just decided not to come. That includes some parents of players who just didn't come because some of them are coming from great distances. So,
hey, so real quick, and appreciate your time. But I would like to bring up here, Sunbelt is good in football. Well, Sunbelt is definitely good in baseball, and it's definitely great news with the the renovation here of the Bud here in the near future?
They've raised good. I can't say how much. They've raised a good deal of what they need to raise they've raised most of it. Dennis Elmer recently came through with $2.5 million, and it's going to be named the Dennis Elmer Baseball Complex, or excuse me, the Elmer Family Baseball Complex.
Okay.
And this is, by the way, this is Dennis's money, not priority.
Right.
It's his personal money. And when you give your company's money, that's yours too. But when you give your own money,
Yeah.
that can really hurt, or it just shows you're really generous, one or the other. And they're getting new lights for spring. They're which is about a $650,000 upgrade, which will be cool. So we'll be Chris Henwood said, I thought maybe I was going blind, and and then they played night game in Southern Miss, and he says, it's not me, it's our lights. So,
Right.
And that will help. But I mean, the Bud needs a lot of help. It needs a lot of help. It really does. And by the way, the Sun Belt is a Power 5 league when it comes to baseball. They had 4 teams in, plus Southern Miss, plus Old Dominion, which should have made it. Old Dominion should have been in. So, that's really a tough league for us. The Sun Belt is not as good in some sports as others, but in baseball and football, which are, they are the sports that count in the South, in the Deep South, if you know what I mean, along with men's and women's basketball. It's really a good conference.
Yeah, there was, I know that 2 years ago they were a number 1 seed, but they had to go on the road, but it was definitely, my wife and I are longtime friends of Jason Hartline's dad, so with knowing Jason's story, Jeff was like, hey, come to Colley Avenue, on Monday afternoon. And it was just a great sight to see, to welcome the baseball team here as they were coming home from Conference USA, and then getting ready to get that number 1 seed there in the region and go on down to Columbia.
Yeah, it was. That was a nice get together. I was there too. Yeah. And they drove all the way back from Ruston, Louisiana, which is a long drive. I was on the bus with them when they drove back from Southern Miss, and that's a long drive too. But Ruston's longer. So
yeah, another plus here with being in the Sun Belt. Those road trips there in Conference USA from Texas all the way to Southern Miss and La Tech.
Well, it's the 4 Texas schools. That was the issue in Conference USA. Right. 4 schools in Texas. That's and UTEP. UTEP is really a part of like central New Mexico. If you look at the border, there's a little portion of Texas that slides underneath New Mexico, and there it is, UTEP right at the end. Yeah.
Right. And so, but hey, and Harry, appreciate your time. And right after football, we go right into men's and women's basketball. So I really don't know. I know that when Blaine was at Old Dominion, I think the CIT or the CBI, we hosted Coastal for an early playoff game, but really don't know much about Sun Belt basketball.
And neither do Jeff Jones or Delisha Milton Jones. They've, for one thing, that league it seems like the rosters change every year for every team because of the transfer portal. So you really don't know what you're getting. I think Coastal Carolina, they lost like 10 or 11 players, and they've just retooled. I haven't seen the women's team practice yet, which I will soon. I have seen the men's team practice this year. Yeah. I don't want to go into names, but there are some good players on this men's team. I see more talent than they had last year. Maybe not quite as much size, but I see more talent. But the thing that really gets me is more togetherness. That team last year underperformed in a big way. And it was when things got tough, they didn't play together. And who knows whether this team will or not? We don't know. but I like what I saw in practice. And Jeff Jones, he was not happy with the practice either. He screamed at them all, get up to the film room. We're going to just watch film of what we just saw. And I turned to Larry Aiken, who's a fan who was there, and I said, "Hey, Larry, I thought that was a good practice."
You know? Well, when you're the head coach, you know.
Yeah, and I was just, I was just seeing players for the first time. A guy named Ben Stanley, transfer from he played at Hampton. I think Xavier, I've forgotten where else he came from. That guy is going to be a handful. He's going to average 15, 18 points for ODU. He's going to be tough to stop. And they've got other good transfers too. This, it's tough to put a team together in, just a few months. So we'll see. But I think there's more hope there than people have. People think, we lost all these players from last year. We got all these transfers. Are we going to be any good? And I think probably the same thing is true for Delisha Milton-Jones and her team. This will be one of the first teams where it's mostly her recruits. And, sometimes it helps when you get your own kids in there because these are kids who are beholden to you that you recruited. And,
Right.
Sometimes the women's team last time went different ways too, if you know what I mean, in certain games. And Delisha talked about that a lot. But she's a hard worker. She had a busy summer too, being inducted to the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame and then coaching the under-18 team to as an assistant coach to a gold medal. So she had a very, very good summer for her.
Yes. Well, hey, Harry, appreciate your time, and sorry we went a little over, but definitely enjoyed hearing about your time covering area athletics there with the Virginia Pilot, and then your time here with Old Dominion, and definitely with it being football season. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. It's I have the best job in the world covering ODU athletics. It's the best job in the world.
Yes. Well, hey, and Monarch fans that aren't season ticket holders, Harry and I did mention that the Georgia Southern game being homecoming. If you don't have your tickets, you wanna get your tickets there for that game, and then the two home games there in November, and especially that James Madison game. That's right up there here with Virginia Tech, with a lot of representation in the area of JMU alums.
It is. JMU will have a good crowd there. Liberty had some fans there Saturday, more than I thought they would have. JMU people travel, so that will be a bitterly contested game. These teams haven't played in 10 years, but the fans don't like each other. I don't know whether the players like each other or not. That's hard to say, but I know the coaching staffs feel a sense of rivalry since they recruit against each other. That's going to be a hell of a series. That's going to be a hell of a rivalry, JMU ODU. Eventually, I think everyone looks forward to Virginia Tech playing at home. I think JMU is going to become bigger than Virginia Tech for ODU as things go down the road. It might even be bigger this year. If we beat JMU, what would be the biggest win of the year? I think JMU would,
Right.
So,
but all right. Well, hey, I appreciate your time, Harry. And if we didn't mention, I know that this weekend is off weekend for games for ODU football, but their next game, and for those of you listening, hey, if you want to make the ride to Conway, South Carolina, noon next Saturday on October 15th, there on ESPNU. That should be a good crowd also.
It should be. So I tell you what, Myrtle Beach, great place to go. I loved it there.
Yes. So all right. Well, hey, so that's a wrap here on episode 40 here with Harry Minium, and see you at the next ODU home game there, Harry, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Sure thing. All right.